Hello my dear YouTuber friends, and I hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to this new video, which is on setting up your Xbox Series X and S gamepad or controller to use with Flight Simulator 2020. So the best sensitivity settings and a couple of reassignments for buttons as well. I'm also going to be giving you my brief review of Flight Simulator on the Xbox Series S. All these different parts can be found on the timeline of the video, check below, so go to the specific timeline and part of the video that you would like to see. I urge you to watch the whole video, especially if you want to set up your controller so it feels more authentic to flying an aircraft. So let's not dilly-dally, let's get on with this video. Okay, let's get straight into this video and start setting up some controls. I'm using the default controls at the moment. Now, they are better than the default Xbox 360 controls when you plug that into the PC version of Flight Simulator 2020. This does feel better, still feels a bit flimsy, and if this is your first time in a flight simulator, it's going to feel a bit loose and a bit unrealistic. So I'm going to press the pause button on my controller. For those who have not played Flight Simulator, it's the same button you would use to pause a game normally, to the right, just below the big X on your controller, on your Xbox controller. Let's go to control options, and let's get straight into sensitivity, because that's where most of the problems with that controller, that default scheme, lies. Before I do that, actually, let's click on sensitivity. These are the default sensitivities. So I'm using my left analog stick to move around and my A button to select, by the way. You can see by default they set the sensitivity to -50 on both the sorts of ailerons and elevators, so left and right movement and up and down movement on your left stick. So they have actually put some default sensitivities in there, and they are quite similar. Let me link the video on my setting up the Xbox 360 controller in the top right for you. They are eerily similar to those settings that I had set up there. So maybe it's possible I may be inflating my ego here, but Asobo may have looked at that video and used it for a bit of reference, because even things like, let me just think, flight control services, even the flaps secondary control services are set to the D-pad up and down, which is the way I set them in that video. It's possible they looked at that video and other videos, to be fair, and looked around and thought, what sensitivities and what settings can we set up which people would feel best with. Anyway, these are the default setups. That's just my possible claim to fame there. I wanted to get that out there. Let's go back to sensitivity. Even though there is sensitivity set up on the left and right and up and down movements, it's not quite enough to make it feel realistic. So I'm going to hover over using the left analog stick, that sensitivity minus on the left and right movement, and using the right stick I'm going to turn that down even further. I found a setting of -80% works well. Now do play around with this. I always say this in my videos when I'm setting up sensitivities and settings. Play around with them to what feels best for you. This works for me. Oops, I went way past 80% there. I'm going to set both the plus and minus sensitivities. So I'm hovering over the minus one with my left analog stick here, and I'm using my right analog stick. When you see that R come up, you see that R there come up. Use your right stick to adjust the sensitivities. And on that left and right movement on your left analog stick, I also found, so your ailerons. I've also found a dead zone of minus 30% works well. So I'm hovering over the dead zone, and I can see that R has come up. I'm using my right analog stick to adjust the dead zone. Oops. Sorry, to increase the dead zone rather, not to make it less. I'm going to increase it to 30%, giving you more of a dead zone in your left and right movement. And already on this screen, I can already feel a difference in that left and right movement. Extremity dead zone. Ignore the neutral, you don't need to worry about that, setting that up. Extremities, so the extremities of the movements. I'm going to put that to 10%. I found 10%, so I've hovered over it using my left analog stick. I'm using the right analog stick to adjust it to plus 10% in the extremity dead zone. And reactivity, I'm going to increase that to 20%. Now, like I said, these just work well for me, but do play around with them and find the settings that work well for you. I'm going to do exactly the same. I'll do this a bit quicker with the up and down movement. So this is when you're climbing or descending on the left analog stick. So I'm using the left stick to hover over sensitivity minus, using the right stick to adjust it. You could use a mouse for this to make life easier. I found no issues using the gamepad for everything in this simulator. I'll come into more detail with that on my review later in this video. So sensitivity minus to 80%, sensitivity plus, I've gone way past it again, to 80%. So exactly the same as you saw with the left and right movement. Dead zone, once again, increase that to 30%. Going a little bit faster here because I've already done this with the ailerons. So I'm just setting these settings to exactly the same. Extremity dead zone 10%. And reactivity to 20%. I'll tell you what, let's just try these first. Press done. So hover over done and press your A button. And because you've changed the default control profile, you have to rename and create a new profile. I could just leave that in fact. Actually, no, I'm going to hover over that name there, press my A button. I'm going to use my X button to delete all that and just type in, using my gamepad again. I'm sure you're all familiar with this on the Xbox. Just type in new. So that's what my profile will be called, and I'll save that. New. Okay. Press Y on your gamepad to apply and save those settings. And go back using B. Now try the difference. Move left and right, up and down. That feels far more authentic. Now I've got proper control of that aircraft. And it feels, even though I'm using the gamepad, it feels like I'm using my gamepad to control a yoke system. Sounds very strange, but it just feels very natural. And there's some resistance in there when you're moving left and right and up and down. That just feels great. Let's go on with some more control settings. Okay, now on my original video of setting up the Xbox 360 controller to work on the PC version of Flight Simulator, I prefer to use my bumper buttons for my trim. With the default scheme, you press your right bumper button in and use your right analog stick, push it up to trim down, like I'm doing there, push it down to trim up. That actually works quite well, you know. I'm not going to change that, and you've still got your finger on or your left thumb on your left analog stick so you can control your aircraft, and it's pretty easy to trim up and down. Well done, Asobo, on that. Holding down the right bumper button and using the right analog stick, that feels pretty damn good, to be fair. But there's one more setting I want to set up. So let's go to control options again. And this is the rudder. Now I do advise that you do learn to use rudder. It feels okay by default. On the Xbox 360, if you change, so that's the left trigger button. I'm scrolling down using my right analog stick, the right trigger button, that's your rudder. Scroll back up, left, right. On the Xbox 360 controller on the PC version, if you changed any of these settings, they wouldn't apply and save. Now, glory be, if you change these settings on the Xbox version of Flight Simulator, they do save. So that's brilliant. What I advise you do, on the left trigger, go to Sensitivity Plus, which is essentially, if I hold my trigger down, left trigger, it's essentially that action. Hover over Sensitivity Plus and change that to -30. Using your right stick to change that to minus 30%. Move away from that, scroll down. And for your right trigger, do the same. Hover over the plus. Again, change this to where it feels best for you. But change that again to -30% on the plus sensitivity. Go down to done. Press A. Apply and save. Now, like I said with the Xbox 360, that wouldn't normally take effect. Here, look, it's saved. That's fantastic. So you can now change your rudder sensitivities. I hope it's the same. I've not checked yet with the PC version. If you plug an Xbox 360 controller, I hope now that you're able to save and change your sensitivities on the rudder there, because that was a big bane of contention for many people. Let's go back. I've saved that and applied it, so let's go back. Let's turn left and use a bit of rudder in there, and that feels fantastic. I'm using a bit of rudder to do a control turn to the left. Wonderful. And now the whole simulator, the way it controls with those sensitivity settings and those rudder. Let's just come back on my throttle a little bit. With the sensitivity settings and the rudder changes, just feels absolutely... Ooh, went a bit screw-whiffy there. Just feels absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. But do keep playing around with those sensitivity settings if it's not right for you. Let's just trim up a bit there. No issue using the right bumper and right analog stick at the same time. Ah, wonderful. Wonderful. And now you can properly go on your flight adventure. Okay, so the good news is that the title screen or home screen of Flight Simulator looks very similar, almost exactly the same, as the PC version. I was expecting a sort of splash screen with press a button and very simplified menus, but no, they put the whole thing in here. I'm using, you can see that cursor, that circle moving around the screen. For those of you who don't have Flight Simulator yet, or have it downloaded, I'll come to that in a moment, or updated, the left hand joystick on your Xbox controller controls that cursor. You can plug a mouse in. I've just simply found that I've had no reason to do it. Now let me talk about the updating. I was meant to get a video, this review, out yesterday for Flight Simulator on the Xbox. But through no fault of my own, I simply couldn't do it because there was a 27GB update, which is typically no problem. That's a couple of hours on my Xbox, typically when I'm downloading games. That would normally be no problem. It was a problem yesterday, and for me and for many people. I'll show you a bit of a video I captured while I was downloaded. This was many hours into downloading. as you can see, the download rate, or the rate it would be downloading, the download speed would fluctuate. Sometimes I wouldn't get any download speed at all. Sometimes it would go up to 40 megabits a second or 50, which is normal. Quite often I'll be getting between 10 and 15 megabits a second. The last 10% took me an hour and a half to download. It was ridiculous. There's a couple of provisos to that. Yes, everybody was trying to download it yesterday. It went live for everybody, I believe, at the same time. Different time zones, but everybody got it at the same time. So everybody was flooding the servers. Asobo should have thought about that, and rightly so. Someone in my Discord mentioned it should have been made available, the update, the night before, and I totally agree with them. Now, for some people, it wasn't a problem at all. A person in my Discord downloaded it, it seemed, within 30 to 40 minutes, the update. For many of us, like me, I don't have a terrible internet. It's not the best, but 7.5 hours. It was 20 past 11 at night when it finished updating. And then I spent the next 2 hours, I'm usually in bed by that time, but I spent the next 2 hours play testing and setting up settings and goodness knows what. Ridiculous. So I learned from that. I hope that does improve. Obviously, as the weeks go along, most people will hopefully have it updated, so you won't run in, hopefully, to those download or update issues. But 7.5 hours for 27 gigabytes. Yeah, I just really hope that improves. Anyway, let's get back to my review of the game, of the simulator. The menu system is fine. Let's go to options here, using my left joystick. As I mentioned, I'm using A to select. Options are quite simplified, as you would expect. Let's go to general options. And graphics. There's nothing here. I thought there may be a few settings you could play around with before it released. Obviously not. The only setting you can have is turn HDR10 on or off. I can't. I don't think my TV supports it, or it's not supported currently. I don't know yet. A few other settings like sound and camera. I'll come back to them maybe in later videos. And data, where you can turn Bing Maps on. That's all very, very similar to the PC. In fact, I'm going to turn my rolling catchy off. No, I'll leave it on because it doesn't seem to affect the simulator at the moment. And other miscellaneous and accessibility options and goodness knows what. And you got the assistant options, very similar to the PC. It's been customized a little bit and neatened up a little bit, I've got to say. So that's quite similar. That's par for the course, as you would say, with the PC system. And controls options, I showed you these earlier in the video. Again, very similar to the PC. I apologise, I've got a little bit of hay fever. I get it early in the morning, and I'm recording this early in the morning. So I'll tell you what, with all that set up, let's go for a flight. Let's go to world map. And I'm going to fly over the... Oh, let's do a video that I did on my must-visit places. I'm trying to think of which one to do. Let's try Innsbruck. Innsbruck. So I'm using the menu. You can use a keyboard and mouse to do this. Like I said, I found no issues with just using the controller. And some of you may not want to use a USB keyboard or mouse. The controller works just fine, I find. So click on Innsbruck. And we'll just use the right joystick to move the screen up. By the way, the map, you use your trigger button to zoom out. As you zoom in and out, you can see there's a lot of detail there in the world environment. And it works as well as the PC map version. I'll come back to dedicated videos about sort of first flights and setting up and goodness knows what, and different settings you can set in Flight Simulator. Let's left click on Innsbruck and set as departure. There you go, it's finished updating now. I think I'm downloading something. I'm downloading one of the world updates in the background, so this is going to take its time to update. But there you go, we got Innsbruck runway 26 set as departure there. Let's go fly. Okay, so as you can see, I'm in the Cessna at Innsbruck, and doesn't it look glorious on the Xbox? Now you can see that cursor on the screen again. You can press in your left joystick on your Xbox controller and that cursor will come up. Press in the left control again and it disappears like that. So you got the sort of you not got that distraction of that cursor on screen. And with that cursor you can go to the menus on top, of course, and goodness knows what. But let's jump into the cockpit. Let's throttle up and release the parking brake. And my controller's rumbling, nice feedback as you're taxiing along the ground there. Rudder works well, the triggers feel adaptive with the rudder, which is good. We'll get up to speed here. And take off. And yeah, okay, if you didn't see my video on my must visit places in Innsbruck, compare the PC version with this using my right analog stick to look around there. Press in the right analog stick and it will center your view. Just trimming out. Maybe come back and throttle a little bit. And get outside. Graphically, yeah, it looks on par with the PC version in this area, absolutely. Now the buildings I found... Now for me, it could be my TV. My TV is a rather old sort of... not the best 1080p TV, which I got second-hand many years ago. Could be my TV, but the buildings don't look quite as sharp or as detailed. I don't know, saying that, it's difficult to tell. Unless you were to compare them side by side. There's not much in it between the PC version and the Xbox Series S, at least my PC version. Oops, pressing the wrong buttons there. I'm trying to trim down. Not much in it. Some of the sort of the mountains and the fauna and flora, the trees and environments do look pretty special on the Series S. Absolutely. I can imagine it will look even better on the Series X in glorious 4K. But no complaints about the way the environments look at all. It's amazing they've got this level of detail. Let's just throttle down a little bit more, I feel. It's amazing they got this level of detail on the Xbox Series S. It does look absolutely fantastic. And this is just one small location. Let's jump outside. Look at that. Impressive. This is one small location off the entire globe that you can go and fly around. No issues at all. And like I said, it could be just my TV. It's difficult to tell. The PC version does look a little bit sharper for me. But like I said, that could just be my TV. But there's not a great deal in it. Like I said, if you want to buy a Series X just to play, a Series S just to play Flight Simulator, you're not going to be disappointed. If you got a 1080p TV, at least, and you don't have a 4K TV, then the Series S could be your better option. They're easier to get hold of, cheaper, of course. And this, like I said, there's not much between it, between the PC version, my PC, and this. Go and check my channel page and my About tab for my PC specs. The Xbox, graphically, the graphics card in it at least, is more powerful. I believe the processor is as well. I've got more RAM on my PC, more memory. The hard drive's about the same. I've got my Flight Simulator on an NVMe drive on my PC version. And of course the Xbox storage is NVMe as well. Yeah, just very, very impressive. It controls rather well. Once you've got those settings, which I showed you before, the sensitivity settings especially, dialed in on the controller, it controls rather well as well. I prefer using a yoke, and I'll be looking at getting and buying a yoke when they become available for the Xbox. And this would be absolutely amazing with a yoke system. But it works quite well with just the humble Xbox gamepad. So there you go. That's my settings for the gamepad, for the Xbox version, and my quick review. If you're looking to play Flight Simulator, you don't want to spend a lot of money on building an expensive PC system, you're struggling to get the Xbox Series X, then go out and buy the Xbox Series S. You're not going to be disappointed with the way Flight Simulator looks and performs. But do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Give the video a like if it's been helpful to you. Subscribe for more. I've got a whole load of Flight Simulator videos on the way. The next one will be setting up and configuring the HOTAS 1. And I'll see you soon.